Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 156 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Dr. Lulu, and Dr. Lulu is a multiple award-winning queer, Nigerian-born pediatrician, LGBTQ plus educator, corporate consultant, CEO of Dr. Lulu's Coaching Consulting Lounge, and chief host of Moms for Trans Kids podcast. She is a mother of 3, one of whom is a transgender young adult woman. In addition to her family-centered, gender-affirming coaching and consulting practice, Dr. Lulu's Pride Corner, which helps families navigate the psychosocial aspects of raising gender-diverse youth, she also helps support employee parents at the workplace. Her, quote, Allies in White Coats, unquote, program trains culturally competent physician allies to help mitigate health inequities plaguing the LGBTQ plus community. I have to say, I haven't had somebody like Dr. Lulu on my show yet, and she certainly proves her worth given the fact that she's been featured on so many other shows throughout her time. Some of those things include being on Oprah, CBS This Morning, NBC, ABC, all the different types of platforms, has allowed her to have a voice unlike any voice that I've had yet on the show. And you're going to find that some of the topics that she covers really dig deep into some of the things that we're even talking about in today's society. Regardless of your viewpoints, regardless of what you might consider as some of your challenging beliefs about some of the topics Dr. Lulu covers, I think that she really digs deep into something that we really need to start having a conversation about, which is learning how to foster our own different opinions, beating to our own drum, being a radical thinker, and sometimes knowing when the limits are, but inviting in new information so that it can come out. Because when we are able to come out, just like what she has even mentioned about her one child today, it might actually rethink your personal journey towards not only developing yourself, but also the best version of everyone else around you. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Dr. Lulu. Doctor, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking some time out of your very, very busy schedule. I am really excited that you're here. We were just talking about that before we even started about many of the things that you got going on, and I really appreciate you carving this out. But before I even start with my first question, I want to tell you, thank you so much for your military service to our country. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. I only did 4 years and I got out, but they were 4 good years and I showed up every day with my full chest, like we say in Nigeria. So it was fun while it lasted. And then sometimes it's time to move on. So I am.
Absolutely. It is always time to find the new adventure, but nevertheless, those are 4 years that you sacrificed. So I appreciate that. Dr. Lulu, I really want to dig into actually you being Nigerian born and then coming and living in the United States and even serving in the military. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your background at a high level and kind of what led you into living in the United States for that matter.
I think I was probably, born a rebel. The first grandchildren of many, very, very many. My grandfather had 8 wives. And I don't know how many children, because many of them also passed away with child illnesses and stuff. And I just happened to be the first one. And I was raised by my parents who were Catholic, traditional Catholic. But my dad was also a little bit more enlightened Catholic, even though he was still a Catholic. But he kind of let me push boundaries a little bit. So I grew up not really having too many boundaries when it comes to my imagination or what I want to do with myself or my time. So with that as a backdrop, I wanted to become an architect. And then my dad was like, well, maybe you should do something more feminine like pharmacy. I'm like, why? And he said, because your cousin is a pharmacist. I said, but my cousin who is a pharmacist has a big sister who is a physician. Why will you pick the pharmacy? I was like, well, if I'm going to do anything medical, I might as well become a doctor. He was like, what? I said, yes. He's like, I'll double dare you. I said, okay, you could triple dare me, and something like that. It was a conversation that was fun and daring. And I was like, wait, if I'm not going to become an architect, then I'll become a physician. I didn't really want to become a physician. I don't think I like blood or anything like that. And then I fell in love with pediatrics, and then I became a pediatrician. So I think sometimes you don't know who you're going to become or what's going to come out of something. I just moved here, I don't know, under a month ago, and I was having a conversation with the people at the front desk today. And believe it or not, when I moved here, I looked at this beautiful apartment and I said, they have more than 500 employees here, and I'm a life coach. It's a freaking buffet. But how do I tackle it? And so I told her, I said, I have an idea. I'd like to offer life coaching to the residents. And she was like, let's do it. That was it.
Wow.
She's like, and so the secret about it is, I read somewhere on Instagram, they said, it's not so much in people believing what you're saying, it's people believing that you believe what you're saying. And so I learned, I was like, my mind was blown. I said, wait, what? And so I told her, I said, I would like to teach CPR to the residents, those who have children, because a Nigerian musician called Davido lost his child, and child drowned in the pool, and nobody could do CPR. But that was an idea. And she was like, whatever you want to do, no one's ever asked. And one of the things I learned as I became an entrepreneur is to just always ask for what I want. The worst answer I'm going to get is no. And no means next opportunity or next one. But you know the funny thing though? Many people say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So many people say yes. I have more people saying yes to me asking, even though I read this book called Go for No, and I'm usually going for no. And so now when they go for no, I'm just like, okay, let me just get the no out of the way because I know that there's a yes waiting. And so I've always been like that. So growing up, I was still like that. Not as much as I am now, because there's something that comes with getting older. And I said to you, when I turned 55 years ago, I ran out of fucks to give. So when you get older, you also become bolder. There's this musician called Sade Adu, who is half Nigerian. When she turned 40, she was interviewed. And they said, what do you think about life? I don't know how old I was when I read that interview, but Sade said, I don't think life gets better, but you get better at life. I was like, wow. So I know that as I've gotten older, gotten better at life, at my life at least.
Mm-hmm.
I have now decided I'm going to live for me, and I'm going to dance to the beat of my own drums, and however they beat, if I make a mistake, I'm going to live with it. Do I want to make a mistake? No. But if I make one, I just own it and move on. And so I think growing up in Nigeria, in a country that was very, very patriarchal, a lot of misogyny, a lot of child marriage, religious, all the things, homophobic, to say the very least. Someone like me who read a lot, I just thought was a ravenous reader. I was always teleported to a different place, a different time, different imagination. And that is where I found my future self as a traveler. I knew then, when I was a little girl in my father's house in Nigeria, I knew that there was a bigger world because I read a lot. I read comic books, I read newspapers, I read stories, I read geography, whatever. I just read, and I knew that there's a bigger world out there. And it's for me to go conquer. And so even though I didn't know how, it didn't matter. And that's why I believe in the laws of attraction, because I didn't know how, but I didn't need to know how. I just needed to know what. What is it that I want? And I think that's what I love about coaching. What do you want? How do you want to feel about what you want? Let's go get it. Let's go get it.
I
And
want
so-
people to go get it too. So
Yeah.
I feel like we have that commonality with that. Yeah. I'm
And
sorry.
that's
Go
how
on.
No, that's fine. But that's how I ended up coming to America. I told my dad, I said, I want to go to America. Did you know that in America, you only have to do residency for 3 years as opposed to Nigeria for 7 to 8 years? My dad was like, really? But you don't know anybody in America. I said, I know, but residency is 3 years in America. And so my dad and I went back and forth. And then my dad said, okay, I think he said, if you raise half of your ticket fare, something like that, I'll let you go. I raised 3/4.
Wow.
But that was after I had taken the exams and passed and gotten accepted to come and do residency at Howard. And that's another day's story. You don't have enough time on this show for that. But I did mention it in one of my books, The Where We Meant Project. I talked about that in that book. But anyway, the point is, I've been dreaming big for a while. I've just always just had a very ravenous imagination. And I'm grateful to my parents for allowing me to imagine, to dare, because I know that there are many girls who were born in the same country as mine who got married off at 13 and had babies and their life changed. But I went to high school and I went to college and then I wanted to come to America soon enough. So I got here within the first 3 years of graduation from high school. I did my residency. I got married. I still had a wild imagination. It was just bigger than my ex-husband, bigger than my ex-wife. It was just bigger. Just knew there was a bigger world. And so finally I told the kids, I said, when the baby goes off to college, I'm going to move from Texas. And they're like, Mom, where are you going to go? I said, I don't know, San Diego. That's what I said. And so everybody knew San Diego, San Diego. And then last July, I came to Atlanta for a mastermind. And I discovered Atlanta. I was like, wait, what? I've been coming to Atlanta my whole life and I've never been here as an entrepreneur. I've been here as a wife, as a mother, as a friend, all the things, for a wedding, for a funeral, but I never came as an entrepreneur. And I saw the possibilities. And I said, guys, guess what? I'm moving to Atlanta. They're like, Mom, wait, what about San Diego? I said, fuck San Diego. I moved to Atlanta. And because I went to San Diego, I spent 3 weeks. I saw 2 Black people. And I came to Atlanta and I spent 3 weeks and I saw all their cousins.
Yes.
So I said, oh, Atlanta is where I need to go because they're Black people, but also because of the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a life coach. I'm a parent coach. I work with parents of LGBT kids. I am LGBT. My kid is trans. I was like, I need to go to a place where there are lots of Black people, period. And then Atlanta has a lot of gay people, but I really want to go for parents. So I think it's a great combination of humans. And so I'm in Atlanta. So I moved here. And that's how I got into this chair that I'm sitting right now. That's a broad overview of the story.
Well, I love that you took us on that adventure, and I purposely did it so that you had that time to expand it, because I know that coming from another country, first off, I don't have any experience doing that, and I've told you that too. Like Pennsylvania, born and raised, and many of my listeners know that too. But being able to have that different perspective, first off, you're bringing in something that for many people, it blows my mind sometimes, because it's really cool to see, hey, this is how I've been raised. This is what I was taught. But other people don't get to see that or understand that, for that matter, and how that creates the opportunities that we have. But then you say, oh, well, I've been moving around and then I finally found where I need to be. And that's something in itself that some people can't say. We sometimes get stuck in where we are at and we don't want to do anything about it. But with you saying that I just create those opportunities, I'll tell you, there are people that don't want to create those opportunities because they don't even know what the first thing is to say. So I'm wondering.
But the danger of that is not listening to your inner child. I really believe in my heart that I gave myself permission to retire from medicine at 52. All my friends were like, wait, what? I said, listen, I said I was going to practice medicine for 30 years. It's 30 years. That's it. Any other job, after 30 years, you've done a good job. So why do I have to keep practicing medicine? And everyone's like, wait, so what are you going to do? So you're just going to throw away medicine? And I realized that it's their own fears. It's their own fears that they're holding on to because they cannot imagine a world without being doctors. But that's on them. And that's okay too. But I just know that as I saw patients for 30 years, I saw pediatric patients every single day. I knew that I had a bigger world than the little office that I was practicing in. I just knew that there's a bigger world. Just knew it. It was just deep in my heart. And I was reading this book recently by P.J. Denuso, who says, if you want something, you need to harness the feeling of a small child on Christmas morning every day about that day. And then the universe will go crazy trying to put all the things in the right place to make it happen for you. And so why not? I told the kids, I said, listen, I'm moving when the baby goes off to college. And the baby went off to college and I moved. Now, I didn't move right away because their father passed away the day after he graduated from high school. So there was a little damper on the plan. And I was like, okay, I'm going to wait 6 months and then I'm still going to move. At one point, I almost didn't want to move again. And then my kids are like, Mom, listen, you've wanted to do this for so long. So that's also the power of telling the right people your dreams. It just so happens to be my own children who are just as radical as I am. I raised them to be radical thinkers, not necessarily extroverted like I am, but they have me in them. So I know they will take decisions that people will be like, wait, what? But I gave them permission by giving myself permission. And so my children were like, Mom, you've wanted to do this for so long. What do you mean you don't want to move anymore? And I was like, well, your dad died. Our dad was going to die. From all my limiting beliefs, they're like, well, he was going to die anyway. He had cancer and all those things. But the point is that they did not allow me to think myself out of it. And that's what I want to talk about. A lot of people think themselves out of it.
Yes.
And so if you look around your room right now, everything you see was somebody's thought, somebody's idea that they did not think themselves out of. Whoever made this cup, whoever made the size of this cup, whoever made the cup with the shape, whoever made a mouse, who made a mouse pad, they found the solution to a problem and they did not think themselves out of it. So why should I think myself out of my idea? I see myself speaking in front of 10,000 people. I've seen that for a long time. I'm wearing mustard-colored pants. I don't own a mustard-colored pants, but I say it clearly. So what I do is keep on doing what I'm doing because the universe will show up.
It will.
It will show up.
It will. But it's something you said about radical thinking. So how do you become a radical thinker? I mean, you taught this with your kids. So how do you do that yourself?
You truly just honestly have to get out of your own way. If you get out of your own way, 9 times out of 10, that equals radical thinking. Because someone who's called a genius today, yesterday was a crazy person, had a crazy idea. It was crazy when Galileo said the earth was round and then suddenly became a scientific genius, right? That's exactly what Beyonce's husband said the other day. They first call you crazy, 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 then they call you a genius.
Yep.
But do you call yourself a genius? Or do you stay thinking that you're crazy? Because I do know that a lot of times the words would be told when we're children, the words have been told as kids. I get that. But then do you keep on believing it and then you stunt your growth? I think, honestly, since moving here, I wish I had done it sooner. And we almost always end up saying that, oh, I wish I had done it sooner. I wish I had believed in myself sooner. I wish I had moved sooner. I wish I hadn't stayed in that marriage a little bit longer because it wasn't working out. Whatever the thing is, if you want it with that need of a small child on Christmas Day, go for it. Go for it now because you're not promised tomorrow. You're not promised tomorrow.
Well, and I even made this remark, you being on TEDx, I've had people on that stage, I've had people that have done all kinds of different types of interviews, but you've been on CBS This Morning, you've been on Oprah Daily, you've been able to be in the Washington Post, NBC, all these different places. You've been able to advocate exactly the radical thinking that you're talking about here. Do you think that there is a need in today's world to have this sort of fire? Because I don't know, for me personally, like I've worked with clients thus far. I told you, like, I'm just a budding individual compared to what you have accomplished. But I have noticed even in some of my interactions that some people just don't know what that means to be able to advocate, talk about yourself, sell yourself, be willing to get yeses instead of no's. And even if you got the no's, to keep moving past that. I mean, do you think that we have a self-confidence crisis, or what kind of crisis do we have? I don't know. I mean, maybe crisis is too much of a strong word. I'm throwing a lot at you there, Doctor, but I feel like there might be something here that you're saying that is so important that people are not recognizing.
I mean, that's a lot of questions, a lot of words in succession, but I think you will always get 100% no if you don't ask.
Yeah.
That's a sure no.
Yeah.
And what you've done by not asking is answering on behalf of the person, whether it's the universe or your father or your child. If you don't ask for what you want, you're 100% going to get a no.
Mhm.
If you ask for what you want, you might even get a yes. However, sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is not yet. And I say that because if I had to maybe done some things I've done in the past, I may not be doing the things I'm doing now. Advocating for my child is a no-brainer. My child is transgender, for goodness sake. I was at the Georgia Capitol talking to the senator about it. I was at the same Georgia Capitol testifying in front of the House of Representatives. So not everyone is going to be a radical thinker. Not everyone is going to be an activist, because even the best activist needs what we call kingmakers, or the wind beneath their wings, or the people who are fanning their flames. Everyone has their own role. And so for me, it's not about everyone becoming a radical thinker. I just need you to believe your own thoughts and get out of your own way. And then you can call it what you like. You don't have to call it radical. That's a choice of word that I use myself. But somebody else might not think it's radical. I
Yeah.
just think it's radical because I think it is. I stand at the very weird intersectionality of Nigerian born, queer. That makes me obviously Black, physician, mother of a transgender young adult who is also affirming. There are many, many Nigerian physicians who are not queer. There are many, many Nigerian physicians who are queer. There are many, many Nigerian physicians who are not queer, but they're parents of queer kids. And there are many physicians who are not affirming. I just happen to be all of those things, and I'm also affirming. But it helps that I happen to be a pediatrician. So I know a thing or two about paternal or maternal acceptance and support of any child. When I'm talking about LGBT, just any child, I know the power of an affirming parent because I'm a pediatrician. So maybe not everyone has to be radical, but I just want everyone to remember what you wanted as a child. Go for it. When I was young, I used to use a pen to be like a microphone or a hairbrush to them. So I've always wanted to. And so maybe not necessarily sing, but I can sing a tune or two. So what is it that you wanted to do as a child? What happened to that dream? Where is it? I loved writing. So it makes sense that I've written 7 books. I'm just saying, it's whatever you like to do it. I had a radio show when I was in San Antonio. It was called The Parent Hour. In that radio show, the only qualification was you have to be a parent. But the only condition to come on the show is you cannot talk about your children.
Hmm.
And it was so hard for these parents. What am I going to talk about? I said, I don't know. But you're not going to talk about your kids. And then we start talking about, what did you want in high school? What were you like as a young adult? And then they're like, oh my God, I used to love knitting, or I used to love whatever. So what happened to that? Well, I had kids. And then what are you telling your children? Who are you telling them to be if you cannot be all of the things that you wanted to be, you know?
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of rethinking and unlearning, right? And then learning. A lot of people say unlearning and then relearning. That's actually incorrect English. If you unlearn something, you should not relearn it. You unlearn something and then you learn. So it's a new information. Means you're doing again.
Yes.
So it's not unlearning and relearning, it's unlearning and then learning the correct thing. If your child says they're transgender and you don't know, you ask questions so you can unlearn what you thought you knew, right? And then you can learn the correct information. You don't relearn what you thought you knew because you're basically back where you were. So it's just a matter of giving yourself permission to be all that you can be. And that in and of itself will give other people permission to be also all that they can.
Dr. Lulu, how do you learn, or how do you get parents or even others to learn how to accept children, especially if they feel that they're transgender, that they are going through and they're trying to learn what their identity is. I feel that there is so much hatred as it comes to this that I hear all the time. And it's sad for me. And I'm not even transgender. I'm not gay or anything like that. And I affirm you being that you're an advocate for it too. But how do we get over this cycle of people not understanding and being able to understand that there are differences like that? Is there any advice you can give to my listeners as it relates to
I
that?
mean, we just talked about learning. You just learn. Now, that said, I'm not here to save everyone. Jesus said that. Jesus
Yeah.
said, I am a physician, but I've not come to save those who do not want to be saved. I'm not going to incinerate myself to become a martyr. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm here for those who actually want to affirm their kids and want to know how. I'm not here for those who do not, if that makes any sense. 8 billion people on earth, which is 800 million, right? I'm not trying to save all of them. There's always been hatred on this earth. There's going to continue to be hatred on this earth. Everyone gets to choose how do they want to show up. Do you want to show up with hatred or do you not? Everybody has the wherewithal to choose that. So if somebody chooses hatred, I'm not going to try to teach them to not hate because no, I get to choose who I want to work with. And I think that's a beautiful thing about life. In today's world, I get to choose who I want to work with. And it's okay if I don't want to work with someone just because I don't want to work with them. Now, if the parent wants to affirm their child, great. This is a good thing. Then let's talk about that. And so my first question usually is, what are your thoughts about the queer community? What are your thoughts about being a parent of a queer child? Where did you get the information from? If you got information from your pastor who is a homophobe, that's incorrect information. Because just like you said, you're not trans, and I'm not trans.
Mm-hmm.
I am cisgender all day. So when I tell someone that I'm cisgender and they don't accept it, that's not my problem. You see that?
Yeah.
That's their problem.
Mm.
And so if I told you I'm transgender and you don't accept it, that's not my problem. That's your problem. Everybody's whoever they were born to be. I love the movie Rustin. In the movie Rustin, the gentleman said, the day I was born Black was the same day I was born homosexual. The kids didn't become transgender. They've always been trans. And if you ask a transgender person today, they will tell you, I've always known. I knew when I was 2. I knew when I was 3. I knew when I was 4. But I didn't understand it. And so in my second TEDx talk, I make a case for rethinking the closet, inviting in versus coming out. And I tell parents, it's not enough for you to say, I want to understand what's happening. I need to understand. Because sometimes your child doesn't understand what's happening. But it's okay for you to be in the know. I want you to just be okay with knowing that this is what your child is and then educating yourself about it. As opposed to, you're not who you say you are. You can't tell me I'm not who I am. You just truly cannot. And that's all about control and patriarchy and colonization and all that, you know? Just because people are doing it doesn't make it right.
Yes.
I mean, slavery was practiced for so many years, and there are people who believe that slavery was good, and they defended it with the Bible. So just because they're doing it doesn't make it right.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
So we all have the ability to know what's right from what's not, and the ability to unlearn and learn. You get to choose. And we've all made decisions. We know how to make decisions. You made a decision to come on this podcast today. You decided to start a new podcast. You decided to buy headphones. We've been making decisions our whole life. So when we say, I don't know, that's a lie.
And I don't
That's
regret.
your brain. Yes, that's your brain offering you a way out. And I don't know is never an answer.
It's always about having that curiosity to be able to learn and unlearn, whatever it is, because you need to be able to just be able to have that growth mindset. I say that so many times to even my clients. It's about growth. It's about not accepting that this is the answer today. It doesn't have to be that answer for all time.
Yeah. And that's why I said to you, I mean, as a coach, you know this, it's all about our thoughts.
Yes.
Our thoughts create our results. Our thoughts create our feelings that create our actions that create our results. So my first question goes back to, what are your thoughts about the queer community? And what are your thoughts about being a parent of a queer child? The answer lies there. The answer lies there. If your thoughts about the queer community is that they should burn in hell and die, well, there you go. That's why you have this situation. If your thoughts about being a parent of a queer child is like all your friends are going to run away and woe is me, you're making it about you. So you're making it about your child. If your child had autism or epilepsy or retinoblastoma, you wouldn't be like, well, I don't know, my pastor said. You wouldn't be that. You'll go and investigate and learn everything you can about that. I'm asking you to do the same thing for your child. And so my brand new practice is called Dr. Lulu's Pride Corner. So in that practice, it's a family-focused gender and sexuality affirming coaching practice. Because I learned from my youngest child. One day he said, Mom, you do know I went from a big brother to a big sister, right? I said, yes. He said, we never talk about that. I said, what do you mean? He said, we never talk about my journey. And I forgot that when my eldest child is transitioning, the whole family is transitioning. It's a family affair. We're all transitioning. And so my youngest child also had to transition. And so now I decided I won't be working with just parents anymore. I want to work with the whole family. And if I can't work with the whole family, I can just educate people and still have a lucrative business just as an educator, just like coming on podcasts and just teaching people about the basics of LGBT. What do those terms mean? What does it mean to be two-spirit? What is gender queer? What is gender identity versus gender expression versus sexuality versus sexual expression? What do all those things mean? And because a lot of times ignorance is the reason that we are afraid. We don't know what it means. You can look it up, of course.
Yep.
They can also teach you. And they say smart people learn from their mistakes, but smarter people learn from other people's mistakes. So you don't have to do what I did and be unaffirming, because I already did that. And the truth is, it's anybody's game. One of the things I say is every Black transgender adult was a Black transgender child hiding in plain sight. I'm obviously biased towards Black kids because I'm Black. My kid is Black and I'm a pediatrician. So my focus is on kids, but also my hyper focus is on Black kids. No one is talking about Black kids. So I'm going to talk about Black kids. And so they used to hide in plain sight. We didn't know who they are because gender identity is a very personal journey. It's this deep internal sense of self. You alone know your gender identity. No one else does. And so a lot of people will remain transgender in silence and never tell anybody because it's just not safe.
No.
If you don't believe me, look up Next Benedict. If you don't believe me, look up every single Black trans woman who gets killed every single day. My daughter's a Black trans woman. So don't even ask me, why am I radical like this? Because my child
Yes.
could be next.
Yes. And I appreciate you not only creating that context, Dr. Lulu, for others to be able to have that discussion with you, but to also educate just like you did to me, along with our listeners. Dr. Lulu, we're out of time, but before I wrap up, I know, it was such a good conversation and I really would have kept going with it for sure. But I want to give you the last few moments. People are interested. You have a business called Dr. Lulu's Coaching and Consulting Lounge. Maybe you can share a little bit about where they could access that, how they could get in contact with you if they're interested in continuing this conversation. I'm going to give you the last few minutes to do all that.
Well, I appreciate that. So Dr. Lulu's Coaching and Consulting Lounge is a big umbrella company. And one of the branches is the Allies in White Coats, where I help physicians become culturally compassionate allies for their LGBTQ+ patients, especially transgender patients. Another branch is my ABC Connection, which is Ally Bridge Connection, where I help organizations support parents of gender diverse kids, parents of LGBT kids, because they're coming for us and calling us groomers, right? They're coming for us. And then, of course, there's Dr. Lulu's Pride Corner, which is the practice, which is the coaching practice. So all three of them are in my website, dr-lulu.com. I'm also a speaker. I do media and education and all that. So I would love for them to go there, check out the website and fill out the contact me form, and we'll contact you and then we can start the conversation. So dr-lulu.com will be one place, one-stop shop. And of course, there's also social media. There's my Facebook. I have a Facebook group, all kinds of things going on. But on my website, you can pretty much get everything.
Awesome. And I'll put all that in the episode notes in case my listeners do want to check that out. But I have to tell you, I feel more informed tonight, and I feel like I am empowered by a little bit more of understanding that I need to unlearn, and then I can learn so many different things. And I think that's so important. And you're sprinkling the pixie dust right now. I just see it because that's what I feel like it is for me. So thanks.
Well, think about it though. You cannot build a house without first excavating the dirt.
Yeah.
That's the unlearning part. And then you pour in the concrete as the foundation. So that's the learning part. So you have to do the unlearning first. And what you're unlearning is what I call untruths. Untruths. And I came up with that acronym. My first name is Uchenna, and my last name is Ume. So it's U squared. So I use this U squared method is unlearning of untruths so that you can learn, which is my middle initial is L. So I put everything into that. Yeah.
Well, with all those initials, thanks so much, Dr. Lulu, for being on Speaking from the Heart. I really do appreciate our conversation today. Thanks for sharing all that insight to me and our listeners. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Again, I want to thank Dr. Lulu for being part of the show and sharing her expertise, because there's so much that we can unpack. And if I had more time with Dr. Lulu, I would have certainly given it to her, because there was so much that we had that really explains a lot of different concepts, a lot of different opportunities to get your voice heard out there. And even with some of the things that she did talk about, we could easily dive into one of these subjects, especially being of cultural significance, and digging into why it's so important to speak from the heart. I've always believed on this show about the importance of being able to see multiple viewpoints. Many of my listeners long-term have understood this. They have really followed along. And for those people, I want to thank you so much for being part of this. But for many of you that are joining for this episode, I want you to know that for Dr. Lulu to express her background, to understand why it's so important to be accommodating of other people, is something that I really want to touch on with this wrap-up of today's episode. Because how you're raised, how you grow up, those are all different types of considerations that we need to have. It's allowing us to push forward when sometimes it's not very easy for us to have that level of engagement, to have that consideration of connecting with each other. Do you know what it means to feel like we're connected? Do you understand what it means to get involved with someone, especially if they do have different types of things going on in their lives? Maybe it is having a child that is transgender. Maybe they are confused about what's going on in their life. Believing in what you're having to say, though, in order to move forward, being asked what I want, is simply what we really want to hear. And Dr. Lulu's story certainly exemplifies the fact that sometimes we don't have that voice. We need to find that voice. We need to be able to speak up. And many of my recent episodes in my monologues even talk about the importance of being able to feel like we are connected with each other. Sometimes we do need to live by ourselves. We have to beat to our own drum. We have to also be teleported into different types of planes of existence by being able to read, listen to other podcasts, travel to new countries, new adventures that we can have. Many of my earlier guests, even some of my international guests, quite squarely put it on our laps of why it's so important to be able to have that different worldview. That's what creates the law of attraction and why we are so interconnected with each other. And I think that even with what we had to talk about today, it allows us to see what the limited potential we have if we just stick in our own mud and only look at what we have surrounding ourselves instead of looking at the bigger, broader picture. Sometimes for people like that, it means that we often have disgusting comments about what we might have towards each other. And regardless of what you might say about that, it means that then you have to figure out what are some of the ways, especially with people that have those differing views, that we can encourage them, we can engage with them in a more polite manner. Who is helping you? Who is that circle of influence that is allowing you to see your inner child, to see the ways in which you once viewed the world? Because if you were able to view the world with curiosity, especially with what some of my recent guests, including Katie Santoro, talked about, would allow us to keep pushing that needle forward. It will allow us to harness what we can believe will make a difference in so many other people's lives. But we have to challenge the status quo. For many, many hundreds of years, thousands of years that humans have existed, you have to understand that many different types of schools of thought have existed on how we can become a radical thinker, how we can speak to ourselves through different types of conversations, how we can get out of our own way, how we can make sure that we keep on growing, means that we have to radically shift what our thought pattern is today to change and encourage what the future can hold. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have this extreme opinion, but it does mean that maybe you can start thinking about ways in which you can tolerate others. It doesn't mean that you have to stoop to a lower standard, nor am I encouraging you to take the beating that some people like to give when it comes to not having that great thought, perspective, or any other type of visionary activity that they think is visionary. No, no, no. Stop yourself right there. Sometimes they are not ready to have that kind of radical thinking, and that's okay. It's okay to take a step back. Being able to understand what we're actually looking at first, asking those bold questions, having that curiosity to challenge the status quo, but also learning how we can become the best versions of ourselves by learning how to think differently. But it starts with being practical. It means that we have to practice. Maybe it means going back to our childhood, finding the curiosity, being able to understand what we wanted to be, and then getting back to square one so we can build ourselves up to square 10, 100, square 1,000. Regardless of what that level is, we can get there. But we get to choose. And I had to say that to a client a number of months ago that I had that didn't quite understand that they did have the choice to make a conscious decision on how they handled a situation that was very personal in nature. We get to choose what we get to work with, who we affirm our thoughts with, whether we have certain spheres of influence that allow us to show up every single day and beat to our own drum, as even Dr. Lulu alluded to early on in our interview. But we have to have the invitation to come in, and sometimes we need to also have the invitation from others to come out. And I think that even coming out, even with what Dr. Lulu had to experience for herself, and even for others, means that we don't have to always feel criticized, condemned, or complained because we had something different on our mind. It doesn't mean that we have an excuse to be cheated on, trashed on, shitted on, regardless of what you might feel about somebody else or what they might be thinking. It doesn't give you free will to walk all over them because they had a different thought than you. And boy, oh boy, in this ever-contentious debate season that we're in, especially in the United States, I can understand why some people just completely go silent, why they don't want to participate, and why it's so important for them to just be excluded, pretending that they're never there. Is that really helping the bigger cause that we need to have as a society, as a culture as a whole? Sure, many of you might be packing up your bags, leaving for another country. Maybe you're going to go to a secluded part of the United States that isn't settled yet. And trust me, there are plenty of those types of places if you're willing to find them. But your personal journey and how you move forward depends on whether you want to run away, being scared of what change looks like, or you really are curious and want to investigate what truth really might look like. That's what I find so interesting about our interview today, is that truth is in the eye of the beholder. It doesn't mean that even my truths align with Dr. Lulu's, and by all means, it doesn't mean that I'm giving her any disrespect whatsoever. I really do trust that she believes what she is preaching. And it doesn't mean that I always have to agree with what other people, let alone my guests, have to say. But can we be a little bit more tolerable? Can we be a little bit more understanding of why that is so important to them? Can't we just open the floodgates to the types of conversations that we should be having instead of nitpicking, condemning, putting down, throwing away all the different types of progress that we have made in this world, whether it's been something of cultural significance or not? Why can't we just learn from our past mistakes? Learn how we can be better people, political animals, as the late Aristotle would put it, so that we can have a more thriving society instead of condemning each other. Especially when it comes to the transgender debate, I will never understand why we have to create that hate in this ever-changing world, because that is not making progress. That's not changing anything. It's making us revert back to our old cavemen, cavewomen days of not even respecting each other in the first place. I think Dr. Lulu has a point. I believe that in order for us to move forward, not only do we have to live for ourselves, but we also have to challenge the status quo. If we can challenge that status quo, if we can be able to consider all the different things that we can learn and foster and develop, and we can even challenge what has always been, quote unquote, the way that we've always done these things, well, then I think that we can create the biggest difference in the world. We can be the radical thinkers. We can change what our society looks like. Sometimes it's not ready for that kind of change, but we can start to practice, just like a small child practices when they first learn that when they put their hand over fire, it burns them. Well, my friends, the fire is here, and you're letting it burn you over and over again when you don't believe in the power of thoughts. And for those that do believe in everything that I'm trying to say, be the advocate. Be the leader that stands boldly outside of your comfort zone and is willing to say that it's okay to think this way, but let's grab a cup of coffee. Let me understand why you think that and answer some questions for you that might be able to help you move that needle forward. We have to be more curious. And I think that by being more curious, we can choose who we want to work with. We can choose how we can move forward. We can choose who we invite in and who comes out. And we can be the private investigators of our lives to challenge what we have as the ultimate destiny, not only for our culture and society, but for our future as well. So join me in that adventure. Let's grab that cup of coffee. If you don't believe in anything that Dr. Lulu said, or even some of my other guests, let's have that conversation today. Because trust me on this, I believe in you and what you have to say. But if you don't believe in what you can potentially hear from others and get them to help you become the best version of yourself, well, maybe you will be stuck in where you are right now. But it doesn't mean that I don't disagree with you. It doesn't mean that I don't like you. It just means that maybe I'll just be a little bit more patient until you're ready. That doesn't mean that there's an invitation to hurt you, discriminate, or even put you down. My door is always open. Because just like in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, I'm always welcoming of all people, all backgrounds. Regardless of where you're at, you're always welcome. Even if I have my red vest shirt on, I will always have some water, coffee or tea, soda to help you, to even refresh you, and maybe a small little bedtime snack. Because this is a safe place, and this will always be a safe place for everyone to help challenge and become the best version of yourself. Thanks for listening to episode number 156 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.